Sorry about that.
Wendy, are we clear?
You are good. I'm not sure if we have quorum or not, but we'll find out soon enough. There's only one potential vote, so I think we're good.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Tom Hansel. I've been leading the format today for SDIC. It is July 25th. We are meeting as the 4 boards. As a reminder, this meeting is recorded. And let's see, let's go ahead and start with MCDD. Ken, you want to see where you're at with your quorum?
Yeah, certainly. Let's call MCD to, what is that phrase?
To order.
To order, man. I'm blanking today. Will you do a roll call vote?
Corky Collier. Saw Corky on. Maybe Corky's audio is not working. Kenzie Berry. Here. Darian Santner.
Present.
Nikki Schultz. Indicated she's not available. Ken Anderton.
Ken Anderton is here, and I believe we have a quorum. And Corky's just indicated in the chat that he's here, but technical difficulties. So
Great.
we're in session.
Thanks, Ken. Eric, do you want to call Pen 2 to order?
Certainly. So I call Peninsula Drainage District number 2 to order. If we could have a roll call, please, Wendy.
Karen Myers. See you, Karen. Mary Helen Kincaid.
Here.
Kathy Kellen. Here. Val Humble.
Present.
Eric Molander.
Present.
5 members are present.
And so we have quorum and we are in session.
Thank you, Eric. Annalise, are you Pen 1 president? Now, congratulations.
Oh, no. Let me be clear. I am not Pen 1 president. I am Pen 1 treasurer and acting chair for this meeting. So I will call the Pen 1 board to order. Wendy, can you please call the roll?
Yes, Tom Collette.
Here.
Jeff Noodleman.
Here.
Annalise Kohler.
Here.
Claudio Camposano, I believe, indicated he was not able to join us. PJ Christopher.
Here.
4 members are present.
Okay, we have a quorum. Pen 1 is in session.
Thanks, Annalise. SDIC calling to order. Wendy, roll call, please.
Got me working hard today, you guys. Tom Hansel.
Present.
Stephen Winkle.
Present.
Tanny Stephenson.
Present.
Annalise Kohler.
Present.
Double duty. 4 members are present.
Thank you, Wendy. And SDIC has a quorum as well. So I didn't see public testimony. Are we pulling that from the agenda?
I am not regularly putting that on the agenda, only as needed. I did have that on for the budget hearing.
Okay. So moving on, we have information from Randy this morning or this afternoon. Randy, operations update.
Yeah, and I think, Wendy, are you going to share this for me, or should I pull it up? What would you like best? I apologize.
I'm gonna share that.
Okay. Well, for those that don't know me, I'm Randy Lyons. I'm the operations manager. I think I've met almost everybody. So just thank you very much for the opportunity to chat with these groups today. And I'm gonna just talk about some challenges we're having just as an operations team with MCDD staff here. And then just break into each district and just give you a quick update about what we got going on, what's going on out there, what you're driving around, what you might see. So
Are you seeing this slide?
Next slide, please.
Yes, they are visible.
So the biggest thing I wanted to to bring to this group is we've been seeing a huge uptick, an incredible amount of vandalism lately to our infrastructure and also to our assets. We had a big big uptick of this in the winter time, and there was a little bizarre. I don't know if it's bizarre, but it was very timely acts damaging ISMs, pump station 4. We went ahead and got some remote cameras for some of these locations. We recently had one of those stolen, and that's kind of a talking to other boroughs that have these out there in their remote sites. They've had that happen. We had an ISM at 142nd a few months back that was completely destroyed. Somebody took like a hatchet or axe or something to it. The middle photo, you can see since we had this repair, and this is a major repair, this is about a $50,000 repair. And we put in a big steel gate and try to eliminate people from being able to get into that location. It's a site that we're not in that box all the time, so we're gonna have to take a few extra steps to actually get into that cabinet when maintenance is necessary, but feeling pretty good about it. We recently had a break-in on campus. Somebody broke into the portable buildings. They just took a giant bar or something and just destroyed the handles and locks. Fortunately, nothing was stolen there.
Hey, Randy, will you tell folks what an ISM is, please?
Yeah, in-stream monitoring system. So we have them strategically placed not only at our pump stations, but other locations throughout the system, 47th, 142nd, 185th, throughout the middle and upper slough. So these are critical for us, for myself and Josh McNamee, the on-call supervisors. We're monitoring the system, especially during rain events. It really gives us a good understanding how water is moving through the system. So that one was, that one specific at 142nd was pretty unfortunate, but it's all up and running again, and trying to take some measures to eliminate that happening again, from putting a portable camera to having good relationships with the landowners in the area. So we're hoping for the best. Like I said, we had a break-in on campus. It was a little interesting. Nothing seemed to be stolen. They just rummaged through everything. A couple weeks ago, we had our tractors were targeted, and another theme of like most of these acts, it's very malicious. They're not stealing anything; they're just destroying our stuff. So our tractors were at our 13th Street pump station, which is normally a secure location. It's on Fazio's property, and we've historically always parked them there. But they got in, and anywhere oil, hydraulic fluid, diesel goes into that machine with stuff full of rocks and dirt and debris. That took our staff about 3 people and about 7 days, full days of labor and equipment to make those repairs, to get those up and running again. So that was kind of a big kick to the stomach, to be honest with you. But the guys are out there mowing right now on Marine Drive, and we're definitely really being strategic in working our, the port properties and other relationships we have throughout the district's strategic places, try to set ourselves up for success. That was the big one. And then we recently just recognized, we put the boat in the water. We have our Thunderjet boat for levee tours and taking out board members or whoever, staff members, and doing inspections on the levees. And fortunately, we put it just in the lower slough here, just to make sure everything was functioning before we put out in the Columbia Slough. And somebody had got on our campus and drilled about a 1/4-inch hole in the bottom of the hole. And that boat started filling up with water real fast when we put it in that water. So pretty crazy stuff. And, we're trying our best, and we're improved some security and stuff. We still have patrols, and added some cameras, and trying to be strategic about how we do our stuff, but definitely right in the storm right now. It's kind of a little crazy right now. So definitely some kind of diverting us from our normal operations. at times, which is frustrating, but go ahead, Mariana.
Have you talked with Anthony Fazio? Sorry, because well, I think you know him pretty well, but
I
he's
do,
mad.
yeah.
He's mad beyond belief, and was talking about security and about the equipment being vandalized and finding sort of solutions to work with us. And he knew your name, so hopefully maybe something happened, because they've lost all kinds of equipment, broken into that mobile office, etc.
Yeah, you're right. And I have been in good conversation with him, and you know, I know just that property and the locations had some struggles for quite some time, and it hasn't been a problem for us really with the pump station and or the our equipment in there. But moving forward, I mean, we're taking extra precautions. We're taking an extra half an hour out of our days to park when we're this close to campus, we're parking them in our shop.
He blames the street racers
Yeah,
that go up and down Fazio and Vancouver and through our neighborhood around 13th. So he's,
Yeah.
I don't know. You probably know more. He's talked with the police, etc. So
yeah. No, I appreciate that, Marihan. Yeah, Fazio is one of them, and others around here, the port and other, you know, neighboring agencies. I'm working with BS a lot, the head of security, Water Bureau, head of security. You know, we're all trying to work together here, but there's been a major uptick. So I just wanted to bring this to everybody's attention. I mean, we're still getting work done, but some of these things are major projects, and it's really taking us away from other scheduled work, and we're getting it all done, but it's been a challenge. And next slide, please. I'll just start with Pen 1. For those that you've been out and about, you've probably seen the levees, the PIR, and the whole levee system. The guys have already gone through and got that kicked off and finished all the levee mowing up. And our herbicide spraying team is going to be coming. We wait about a couple weeks, and they'll be following behind them, just to let some broadleaf plants pop up through the system, and applying some herbicides to just keep those levees looking good, you know, so we can inspect them during high water events and keep them up to the Army Corps standards. And we also, just like all districts, we're out there twice a week. We're visiting Vanport, we're visiting PIR pump station, along with some critical ditches and culverts and other areas that we need to keep water moving. So that's some routine stuff that we're continuing to do. And one of the big things is right now the pump is basically condemned, that pump station at Vanport. And so we have a 4-inch temporary pump out there. And we've been working with the port and coordinating with them. And Josh is leading it from our team and other staff from the port. And we're hoping they get a solution in there come before the big rains this winter. So I'll stay optimistic and hope so we get something in there. That 4-inch pump, you know, it doesn't really move water at the capacity that the last one did. So it struggles to keep up when it's really raining. And working with Carrie Butler from the port, who's the property manager there, they've decided this year, actually, they're keeping that lake full, and just to reduce all the pumping and extra costs that come along with that. And they were okay with this 1 year. So currently in the summertime, we're not moving much water at all, which is fine. So, but hopefully a solution comes up by this fall, and just keep that place, keep the expo center and all that area just nice and good. So that's about it. And then Pen 2, once again, too, you see, look out here, the guys have completed all the levee mowing in Pen 2, and there's a photo up the top left there. You can see both those tractors at work. They'll come back through the system and hit a few key ditches on the way back through in the fall. But they did a really good job, and everything's looking good. And following that too, that the herbicide spraying team's going to be following them here soon, and just strategically hitting areas with blackberries and other broadleafs just to keep everything at bay and keeping them looking good and healthy. And also, just like the other districts, we're visiting all our key locations twice a week. And just one of the big things was we did some coordinating with the city of Portland and Parks and Rec. And our guys have really been noticing the children's arboretum hasn't really, there's a lot of blockages, a lot of trees down, beaver dams, just a lot. And it's really restricting flow in that area that runs all the way through Gertz into Fazio's property. And we coordinated with the city, and everybody was okay with us going in there. And we went in there and really opened up some conveyance. So I feel really good about that work. That's going to make us a lot more successful moving into the wet season. So that's exciting. And basically, no major projects happening this summer in Penn 2, and we're just going about our business, and things are looking in good shape. So next slide, please. For MCDD, one of the big things I struggle every year to get seasonals, and I think talking to other people, it's tough to get to fill those positions. But I'm really excited. We've got 2 young men that are just graduated high school, and they've been working since June, and they've been a really big help to our team and making us a lot more flexible to adapt to some of the challenges we're having and stuff. So you'll see them. I think the average person on our team is about 40, so you'll recognize the 2 youngsters walking around. So it's been nice to have some youth on our team and bringing a different perspective. So another big win is we got our barges on campus, got all the pieces and equipment for that, and we're just getting ready to start getting that all dialed in and making sure it's working properly. And then we'll be going out and doing some test runs with that. But that's really going to open up a lot of work that we've been wanting to do that we haven't had the ability to do. A big part in MCDD, but in other districts as well. So we're really excited about that, and it's a big team effort to make all that happen and come together. So, and some other stuff, we've been working with the city of Portland for the last 20 years to keep the water levels down real low for water quality purposes. So for the slough enthusiasts, you've probably seen this summer, the water levels have really been fluctuating from like 2 to almost 3 feet. And that's on it's a 2-week cycle. So they're trying to gather some new data and see if actually keeping water levels at a higher level can actually still promote health in the system. And if they get the right information back, they might move in that direction. So for those that are out there, there's definitely, depends on the day, there's a big swing. So which can, depending on, I think most people are taking kayaks and stuff, doesn't really eliminate much access, but definitely visually you can tell there's a lot more mud flats when it's low, or the islands are really exposed, and or the water's up quite a bit. So it's been working out. So happy to work with the city, and hopefully they get what they want. And just another big thing, we've completed some levee repairs off of Marine Drive around 122nd with houseless dig outs and different things. There was a couple phase process, but wrapped up the ones off of Marine Drive. And also we went in and did a little bit of maintenance. I think everybody probably knows that the 142nd cross levee off Airport Way is historically, there's a lot of camps in there, and they created a lot of damage, mostly superficial, some, bunch of ruts off and taking a bunch of grass off. But we went in there this last week and brought in new rock and dirt, and we staged some stuff too as well, just waiting on another little, probably the next cleanup. But we're really trying to get that system back to where it needs to be. And I'd say it's still functional, but when there's exposed dirt and other things like that, it's not ideal. So trying to get that back in order. Next slide, please. And SDIC, things are, I threw a few photos up here. You can look here in the next probably month. You will see our mowers will be back out there. That's generally towards middle into August is when they finally get out there. But those levees will start getting mowed. Our team's already applied some herbicides early in the spring out there, and they feel really good about that. And I threw a photo in the middle. It's been a few months, but some of those we had some heavy rains, and you know, that weir is really helping us out. So during those 1, 2, 3 day storms, we've seen an inch plus of rain each day, that those pumps get overwhelmed. And this weir, when we're able to shut it, it creates flood storage and it alleviates pressure on those 2 pumps that are on this SDIC pump station. And yeah, we exercised that I think twice in the late winter, and it was it's been a couple years running now. That thing's working great. So we're really happy to have that, and it's a great tool and resource for us to be able to operate that. And also we work with the port and who manages that trip weir site, and they ask us generally every year to close it and keep as much water in there for their water saturation levels in there and stuff, and which is fine by us. It doesn't affect us at all. So we're happy to work with the port always, and continue to work that relationship. It's got a lot of good contacts over there. And you know, for the most part, SDIC is probably our best. Well, I don't want to say it's the best district. All districts are great, but it's pretty minimal about the trash disposal and the illegal dumping. I threw a photo up here. This is somebody cut the ports lock just east of 223rd onto that trip weir site and illegally dumped, and just calling the port. They got their own program, and they were able to clean that up quick. And we also see a little bit of activity. It's every once in a while down by the 223rd double barrels is where people like to illegally dump. But the Metro RID program is that you can really see out there's a lot more resources within the city, and as far as, you know, response time and helping us out, and the Metro RID program especially, they're pretty on top of it. They probably cleaned up that 223rd site 4 or 5 times in the last 3, 4, 5 months. So but overall, you know, really just going about our business out there, checking our districts and hitting all the key locations. I did put on here, there was a drainage issue on Northwest Commerce Court and Marine Drive, and SDIC has a IGA with Multnomah County. And so we manage these ditches right off Marine Drive, and right in that area, there's a field right by that Thunderjet, that's the big boat that sits up top. I'm sure you all know it. But that historically is always flooding. So they asked us to do a little further investigation, and we found that there's some level issues. Either that field's too low or that outlet pipe's too high. And through that investigation, our team did find there's some ponds back off of Northwest Commerce that we historically they didn't used to be there, and then they developed and put those ponds in. So our team's actually has added a couple spots to some of these outlets in those ponds just to make sure we can keep water flowing in that area. So there's no major development on that right now. The county's kind of, the ball's in their court, but happy to work with them and support them how they can within reason. So I feel like I'm talking a lot. So that's basically what's going on. We're in our seasonal time right now. We're mowing, we're spraying herbicides, we're checking all the key locations and just prepping. Mary Helen, do you have another question?
I always have another question.
Yeah, well, I didn't mean that to be rude. Do you have a question?
No. I jokingly say that because many people say I ask too many questions. I got questions from a couple neighbors of the mowing along the ditch on 13th, and I passed that information along because people were concerned about fire danger, because driving along 13th, there's drive-through traffic and people throw a cigarette out. And I don't remember, Val, if you remember a few years back, there was a fire and out there in that Beanfield area, and people from Golf Court Road got down there before anybody called the fire truck. So I promised that I would bring it up at a public meeting because they couldn't attend and make a public comment themselves. But I just wanted to see if there was anything besides after somebody throws a cigarette out and a fire starts in the dry grass, or if it's way too much trouble to pick the dry grass up, then we just live with what might happen. But with it being so dry, I promised that I would say, ask that question. So,
You know, I would say, I don't want to say it is what it is. We don't really have the ability to go back through and pick all that up. We usually just leave everything as is and open to discussion, but it's pretty much, that's where we go through and mow it, and generally that gets mowed, and that's already been mowed this year. But yeah, I don't think there's much that we can do really. Definitely don't have any equipment to do any baling or anything like that, or yeah, I don't think I'm really answering your question. I think
no,
I think it's hard to eliminate. It's kind of hard to eliminate that, and that hazard exists throughout all 4 districts, and it's a risk for sure.
well, and they're making such a big deal about wildfires and dry brush, etc. So I think that's brought it more to people's attention than in previous years. So
I guess I would close with, our team carries, a few different types of extinguishers and stuff, and they're on top of it if a fire starts. But unfortunately, we haven't had any this year. It's a hazard that exists when mowing and heat and dry grass, and then it being next to all these cars and everything else. It's not perfect, that's for sure. Kenzie, you got a question?
Yeah, I think with Eric, were you first?
Just a quick question for you, Randy. It looks like you've hydroseeded on Bridgeton Road on the levee side. Is that with that new mixture that's native grasses that we're experimenting with?
I do not believe so. I think that's the classic, the ODOT mix. The test plots are just east of 33rd Avenue off of Marine Drive, that corner, and which I know Amber's been leading that from MCDD, and having a pretty good response to that. You know what? And I don't want to take up too much time, but that is something for Penn 2. We have been really struggling with that location. We have been having a heck of a time having hydroseed take at that location. So if you guys out that live there at Bridgeton, we're out there twice a week right now watering it. We've had to hydroseed it. I think this is our 3rd time, and the second or 3rd time. We've had a few phases, but we found, we're like, what is going on? And the geese are eating everything. They're going in there and eating all the seed and all the grass. And so we just, for those, you'll see it off of Marine Drive as well. We just last week put up a bunch of bird deterrent, basically just a bunch of stakes with,
Mylar.
Flashy stuff. So we were really scratching our head, and then one of our guys went over the other day, and they're like, there's 30 geese sitting here. And there was more grass last week than now. And so we've been battling the geese, but hopefully, and moving forward, we'll probably have to implement something like that kind of really haven't ran into that, but we ran into a couple locations this, not only with a bad fall growing season and a bad spring season, it's just been a battle, but and now we have a geese frost. So anyways, and then Kenzie, did we get to yours?
No, I have a few quick comments and questions. So I'd love to hear on the test plots. Do we have like if the test goes well, then we will roll it out in a couple of years? That's one question I had. Another comment was just great. I'm really glad the fire risk question was brought up. I know you're balancing so many different types of risk. So benchmarking might be interesting to talk to different organizations if they're doing anything different around like mowing and dry grass. So I'm happy to get a little intel from PGE in case they have anything interesting to share, but wanted to make that recommendation as well. If there's anyone else you could call up.
And that brings me to my question. On the targeted vandalism, I would love to hear just a little bit more about the sophistication you're seeing, specifically, how much information does it seem like these acts are being done with a high level of sophistication and detailed information about our system?
I feel like the majority of the acts are extremely timely. In the winter, when we were seeing a lot of them, we were seeing things we've never seen before. Whereas right before, when the forecast said we're going to get an inch of rain, we'd have a log boom out in SDIC, pump station 4. Our log booms, some are chained, some are roped. They were cut and opened up, which can be, major impact during when water's really flowing. Debris can come in and really clog stuff. And so very intentional, like somebody, and these mowers, I don't know, but the wintertime stuff seemed like somebody doing it has a little bit of knowledge, and I'll say that. Somebody understands what's critical and what's not during rain events. And yeah, and then, our mowers are out and about. It feels like somebody understands like the timeliness of our operations and understands how our system works with a decent amount of knowledge. So yeah, it feels like we're being targeted and like strategically targeted.
And we're reaching out to the police. I was chatting with Ken Anderton earlier, and he had a good recommendation to reach out to the FBI field office, which I'm going to do after this meeting. And because it is critical infrastructure, and Kenzie, I know PGE's had some issues. I know the port's had issues with many of its facilities. So we're working really hard to figure this out and try and get it stopped.
Yeah, and so there seems like there's knowledge, but the how it's been done is very barbaric or archaic. I mean, it's just destruction. And that's another piece that a lot of activity that you see, vandalism, at least people steal batteries. They're trying to get something. This has all been very malicious and just destroying stuff and not stealing anything. If it's computer systems and wiring in a cabinet to batteries on the tractor, and honestly, the last one, finding this hole in the boat, I mean, that's just crazy. I mean, you could kill somebody doing that. So think about the Columbia River with people on it.
And you might be able to get the FBI or the U.S. attorney to give you some guidance on if this is a federal facility. If so, the penalties are much higher because this is affecting interstate commerce and trade and protecting critical power infrastructure and other federal infrastructure. So if the levee system breaks, one good example, it could flood, or the pumps aren't able to work, it could flood BPA's facilities, or even the FBI's for that matter in Cascade Station. So I think it would be good if you reached out to the feds and get some guidance there.
And then Kenzie, I don't know if I answered your first question. I think you had 3 questions. Or did we answer it? I don't remember what it was.
Test plots of the grass.
Oh, the test plot. And that's honestly, I don't want to speak and give you false information. I believe the intent is moving forward. If this does work, we're going to implement this into our program somehow. But if you want a little more information on that, I'll definitely chat with Amber and be able to kind of make sure I'm not giving you false information. So I can reach out to her and just to share some of that, what are the long-term goals and everything, what she's been managing that program. Kathy?
Yeah, I'm really sorry to hear all this. This is, seems more elevated than in terms of it being strategic and costly than I realized. So I appreciate the update, and thank you all for working on this, trying to do your job while dealing with damaged equipment and making sense of it. I'm just wondering, when you say that it seems strategic, do you mean that the perpetrators have knowledge that could be gleaned just from observation, like, you know, being out and about and in the area, versus actually having access to email correspondence or IT access, that sort of thing?
You know, I got to be careful what I say, but I would think the average person, no matter observations or not, wouldn't understand like these, like the little things like log booms and the importance of trash rakes in a pump station they don't even know exist. And then.
Oh, I lost
Information, but it feels very planned and coordinated, and it's pretty consistent, especially during the winter problems we've had. Pump station 4 trash rakes were destroyed before a big rain event. All these log booms and other just things that are like these little sites, like 223rd. No, I don't know. There's things that have never happened before.
And
So-
Kathy, I would say as each additional incident happens, it's sort of one more bit of evidence that suggests there's someone with knowledge of our system,
right.
or people with knowledge of our system who may be involved, but we don't know that. And so that's why I think, you know, Ken's suggestion is good, and why we're working on some emergency procurements for more hidden cameras, and reaching out to all the other bureaus with infrastructure in the area to see if they're experiencing similar things.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. And yeah, keep us updated. This is rough.
Randy, I want to thank you for you and your whole team. And I'm sure that comes from all the district board members. Your work in the field is critical in ensuring that this infrastructure is operational when it's needed.
Well, thank you very much. And yeah, it's my pleasure, and I appreciate everybody letting me chat a little bit today. And hopefully I see y'all soon. But you'll see us out there, so stop and say hi.
Thanks again, Randy. Lori Baker. What do we get? Legacy financials and the dissolution discussion.
Yes, thank you. Wendy, can you pull up my slides? Wendy is going to help me out today because I am here from Savannah, Georgia. Thank you, Wendy. We're going to try to coordinate our timing. We'll see how well we do. So staff have been undergoing a number of planning activities in relation to the transition of the urban district. And we realized that we really should start having some regular sessions with all of the boards to talk about what's happening and where things are going, because this does have an impact for all of you. So we are sharing this presentation with you first, and then we'll be taking this to our urban board next week to share it with them as well. So apologies to those of you who get to see me twice. You can double check and make sure I am saying the same thing at both meetings. When I refer to the board in this presentation, I do want to let you know that I'm referring to the urban board, not to the legacy district boards. So in addition to the board's decision-making around the revenue process, there are a number of steps in the transition process. This is a summary schedule of the major activities that will need to occur as part of the transition. You're most familiar with the planning steps, with the approval of the year one forecast of $16.7 million by the urban board in June. Cash flow analysis is underway, but needs to align with actual results from our fiscal year ended June 30th, 2023. This data will not be available until the fall as we finish our year-end process and prepare for the audits of the districts. Given that we're continuing to work towards a July 1, 2024 transition, budgeting for year one would begin late this calendar year with adoption of a budget required under Oregon local budget law by June 30th, 2024. So there'll be some timing and some planning around that. There are a number of resolutions that will need to be considered as part of the dissolution and transfer to the urban district. These include the call for dissolution of the legacy districts once revenue is established, approval of the debt distribution plans, and acceptance of the transfer of assets from the legacy districts. Administratively, we'll need to transfer employees and benefits, transfer contracts, and ensure that policies and procedures are fully developed for the urban district. Current contracts are being drafted with provisions that allow for the transfer of the contract from the legacy districts to the urban district. Policies and procedures at MCDD are being reviewed and updated and provide a foundation for similar policies for the urban district when the employees transfer. And staff are working to gather the information necessary for a smooth transfer of the MCDD employees to the new district. Today, we're going to take a look at some of these steps. We'll look at the cash flow planning and some of the potential solutions that we're considering as we look at cash flow in year one for the urban district. We'll look at the value of each of the districts as we move towards the transfer of the assets. And we'll take a look at the debt distribution process. So why is cash flow important as we move towards year one of the urban district? We've presented a balanced forecast for the first year at $16.7 million. However, there are timing differences between revenue and expenditures that will need to be managed. While much of the spending is spread evenly throughout the fiscal year, the revenues have some timing issues. Assessments are collected along with property taxes, and the majority of the collections occur in November and December. The privilege tax, which is the proposed new source of revenue, will take some time to implement once legislative changes occur. We anticipate that it will take a year to get the privilege tax collections going, with system updates needed at our partner cities and the county to allow for collection of the tax. These timing issues will need to be addressed to ensure that we have the resources we need to cover our spending. We will be providing the urban board with cash flow scenarios in the fall. It's important that we use the most recent information available as we complete that analysis. So we'll be utilizing the data from the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2023, once that information is complete. As a preview to our cash flow work to be shared in the fall, there are a few solutions we'll be considering as we complete our cash flow analysis for year one of the urban district. For those revenues that will be delayed, we have some potential additional sources of funds. We can consider working with our local partners to continue our local partner IGAs, such as the stormwater fees with the City of Portland, to provide some interim funding. Each of the legacy districts will have some carry forward cash balances that can support continuation of operations in the early months of the first year of operations for the urban district. And we also have the $1.2 million line of credit available from the City of Portland. On the spending side of the equation, we can also look at the timing of our spending. We can delay filling any vacant positions, delay or reduce capital spending, and review timing of projects and other spending included in the initial forecast. Next slide, please. Let's move now to review the transfer of assets from the legacy districts to the urban district. There has been some question with regard to the possible unequal transfer of cash from the legacy districts to the urban district. When looking at the consolidation of entities, cash is only a portion of the value of each district. Net position gives us a better sense of the value that each district holds. This measure includes assets such as cash, receivables, other assets, and capital assets. It's reduced by accounts payable, accruals, debt, or pension and post-employment benefit liabilities, and future liabilities for capital projects that aren't funded by PMLS. You can find the detail for those balances in your packet, labeled as Legacy District Summary Balance Sheets. This chart shows the net position for each district using the June 30, 2022 balances. As you can see, MCDD has an $8.6 million net position and is the largest component of the combination. This is due to the value of capital assets, that are being held by the district. These assets are essential to the maintenance and operation of the system. And remember that this is a net number and takes into account the impact of any outstanding debt on MCDD. When adequate revenue is established, the urban district will move to dissolve the legacy districts. The assets from the districts will transfer, forming a new combined district. This schedule shows the value of capital assets for each district, net of depreciation as of June 30th, 2022. The process to distribute legacy district debt is defined by ORS 550.360. Debt distribution plans will be developed and will include long-term debt and accumulated pension and other post-employment benefit liabilities. And that all sits just on MCDD for our employees. Debt distribution plans will only be needed for MCDD and Penn 1. So these are the steps that are underway by the urban board as we move forward. The board approved the year 1 forecast at $16.7 million in June. Next, the board will be considering what mechanisms should be used to generate sufficient revenue. This discussion will include further analysis of the impact of assessments, including a common assessment methodology, impacts of rate increases at varying levels, and compression impacts to local partners and to the urban district's overall revenue. This analysis is well underway and will be shared with the urban board in the coming months. Additionally, Eco Northwest is performing some scenario analysis on the privilege tax to provide better information on the impact of this new source of revenue for the district as well. And I would say the original forecast included a 20% rate increase on the assessments, but we are looking at different levels. I think there was a lot of discomfort with a 20% increase. So we are looking at a 10% increase as well in assessments, and we'll be bringing some detailed information so folks can see what the impact of that is, as well as the impact of compression and all of those other changes that we're looking at as well. And with that, you can bring down the slides. Wendy, thank you for helping me, and I can take any questions. Kathy?
Lori, this is probably a silly question, but why is it called a privilege tax?
You know, that terminology is a real challenge. So when we started taking a look at fee revenue, what we identified, and we've talked about this a few times, is that the nexus and proportionality requirements were really lending us down a road that was making it very difficult to determine how we would collect that tax because of the complexity with aligning the services received to the fee that you were paying. And so we started taking a look at other options and worked with outside counsel. And there was a meeting where he was mentioning, wow, you really should take a look at the privilege tax. And I think how I would describe it, even though it's a really weird term within the state regulations, is it allows us to do a similar revenue source as what we really envisioned the fee, but at a very much less complicated allocation manner. So it is a tax, it's not a fee, so you don't have to tie it to the services received. And so it allows us to really simplify the allocation of that revenue across the full district. So the name is really complicated, but it really is lending to a lot more flexibility and ease of implementation to be able to use. For example, we could use acreage of properties, or we could definitely tie into some of the other allocation methodologies that our city partners are already using in their utility billing systems. So that's the work that we've asked Eco Northwest to work on, is to really look at what would be the easiest allocation mechanism that would cause an easier implementation of the billing. So to me, it sounds like a tax and it sounds really complicated, but it's going to look like a fee and be a lot easier to implement.
Okay.
A few other examples are for the privilege of manufacturing or importing wine in the state of Oregon, you pay 50 cents a gallon. for the privilege of selling new vehicles in the state of Oregon, you pay a percentage of the sales price to the state. For the privilege of using municipal right-of-way for energy or telecom, you pay a portion of your gross revenues to the cities. So it's a tax that's used already. It has an unfortunate name.
Okay, yeah. Oh, interesting. Thank you.
I didn't see who was next.
Eric?
Yeah, so there were a couple of numbers that showed up in your analysis that we don't have any detail on yet. Would you please send on to me the future liability for non-PMLS CIP?
I can. All of the districts did approve their CIP plans in June, so that information is from those documents, but I certainly can provide all of the board members with the detail for which projects were included in those numbers.
That'll be important for me.
And I would say for Penn 2, the big one is the net cost of the 13th Avenue pipe project.
So this number, that $4 million that doesn't show up on our 22 year-end balance sheet, if it's completed or if it's largely paid for, that's going to go down, correct?
Which number are you referring to?
The non-PMLS CIP, $4 million.
Those are future costs in the CIP that will that would add to assets as you pay for them. But if the timing occurs as is planned, it would make that change to the balance because you would need cash to pay for those costs.
Right. And all right, we'll get into that later.
Lori, I've got two questions. The first is, how confident are you? I'm obviously not completely confident that we've taken into consideration all the potential problems. I may be jumping a little too far ahead here. We may need to wait to see what comes out of Eco Northwest, but things like compression, non-compliance. I'm worried that we're going to get surprised, 2 years down the road, sort of thing. And how confident are you that we're taking all the possible problems into account?
I would say you've seen initial projections, and I have been spending this week really digging in on the assessment side. So I've got a spreadsheet that's got about 500,000 records in it, and I'm taking a look at every single property and doing those projections of the compression and how that's going to look going forward, so that we can come back to the urban board with a real good feel for what dollars need to shift into the privilege tax. I think that, we've heard the feedback from the board that a 20% increase is too much for us to be considering. So we're taking a look at that impact. And just with the assessments alone, looking at a single assessment allocation methodology has some impact to the taxpayers within the floodplain. And then when you put on top of that the impact of compression and of the rate change to the assessments, those make changes too. And we didn't have all of that level of detail when we did our initial round of projections. So each time that we come back and are looking at things more closely, there'll be better information for us to know what we're anticipating. But it all, there's as I always say about budgets, the minute you print them on the paper, they're wrong. And so we're doing our very best to look at all of the things that might have an impact, but there's always that question about what's going to happen that we didn't anticipate.
It sounds like a lot of fun what you're going through.
I would also just add, Corky, that the municipal governments, we need to talk with them about any fee they're going to charge to do this work on our behalf. And Eric Molander, as you raised, there's some debt collection or bad payment issues that require some additional conversation with our partners. So yeah, there are a significant number of variables in addition to getting agreement from you guys, getting agreement from the legislature. So we recognize there's risk before us and are trying to pursue both this path, but also the extension of additional sources of funding more in the status quo framework that we're operating in today.
Right. my other question was, and it's somewhat related. We've taken on a fair bit of debt. You know, we've got a bank loan, we've got a line of credit, but a little silver lining to that, perhaps, in my mind. So I want you to correct me if I'm wrong here.
Sure.
The silver lining is that we're putting that debt repayment into our current budget forecast for the coming many years. And
Yes.
then as that gets paid off, and I want to say they're generally 10-year notes, I think, I'm not sure, but as that gets paid off, we've got a little windfall there all of a sudden. Not huge, but something that certainly will help us a little bit more down the road. Am I incorrect with that?
No, that is correct. That will allow us some capacity. I think what we'll be talking with the board about when we start to move towards that point is taking a look at capital reserve policies and how can we really plan for the future to be able to replace some of the assets as they age out. So that's going to be a critical part of our planning as well as we move forward. So I really see that opportunity as we start to pay off the debt, to take a look at those other planning functions for the organization and make sure that we're in a good position to continue.
Yeah,
to
and hopefully we
promote
can
operations.
put aside some of it as a little, savings account sort of thing, for rainy day
Exactly.
fund sort of thing. Thanks, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Tammy?
Go ahead. Your mic's off, Tammy.
Sorry about that. You mentioned 2024 as possible dissolution, right?
Mhm.
And I'm wondering how that works out with the GO bond. Because I don't know how we'd fund capital, how the new district would be able to fund any of the capital without that bond passing.
We did reduce the amount of capital funding in the projections because of concerns from the board. So there's $1.5 million right now in the 16.7 that's identified for capital funding, but you're correct. Those large dollar payments that start to come due under the PMLS projects are looking to happen in 25, 26. So there is a little bit of leeway with that capital bond, but not a lot.
Yeah, I'm just like, if we go through dissolution, how do we make sure that the projects get built if the bond's not approved?
I think
kind of a little bit chicken
I
and
think
the
that
egg
question
there.
remains whether you go through dissolution or not. I
Right.
think that
The legacy districts are in a more challenging position to generate that revenue than the urban district would be.
that's correct.
You don't have the authority to issue the bonds, so.
But we're kind of here for the bond. So I think the bond's kind of a critical piece to the whole discussion, I guess, is what I would say.
Yeah, would agree, and time is of the essence, which is why we're aiming for as early a vote on that as we can with your approval.
On the bond or the dissolution? Okay,
On the bond.
thank you.
And I think that the one thing to be aware of too, Tanny, is that without the consolidation to the urban district, our financial advisors and our bond counsel are telling us that it would not be possible for us to issue the GO bonds. So you can't use the urban district as a shell company to issue the GO bonds, because there has to really be a basis to the organization or no one will buy the bonds. And if no one will buy the bonds, then you don't get any money. So the timing is all really interrelated. You can't issue the debt without having the entity stood up.
Right. And I just don't know how you can dissolve the districts before you have the bond resolved. Either.
Correct. It's all very interrelated.
And the legislature allows the urban board to call for dissolution as soon as they have adequate operating revenue. And they would have the same access just with the assessment transfer as the legacy districts. So that meets the legislative threshold to call for dissolution, again, subject to the urban board's call for that and their vote to do so.
But it is operating in capital, right? That
But again, the legislative interpretation and clarification that we made is we don't have to pass the capital bond because the legacy districts already don't have that capacity. So we only need the similar capacity to the current legacy districts to move forward with dissolution. Passage of the bond is not required, although there's some interpretation that passage of the bond would provide sufficient revenue to call for dissolution, but I don't think we would do that without an operating revenue plan.
Okay. Thank you.
Ken, you're next.
Yeah, this is a good information. Thanks, Lori. Taking a really complicated scenario here and trying to boil it down for us all to understand. Just curious, is there any, so, we have Salem that issued a localized income tax. Obviously Metro did for the homeless service and the preschool for all. Is there any municipalities that are using privilege tax for public utilities? I know there's privilege for selling a car, for a dealership or malt beverage, and privilege for, say, cable TV or whatnot. But is there any public utilities that are using this right now?
No, the city of Gresham in the Dolan case got tangled up in trying to charge a public utility higher tax for a general purpose, but they were successful in charging that tax for the specific purpose, which is why a flood district works, because it is funding for a specific purpose. In terms of an income tax, we would have to seek additional legislative changes to include that as an option. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting an income tax, but I know different municipalities has used different forms of taxation, but let's just be frank, because the current property tax is capped, right? And so
Yes.
there's been using it as somewhat of a workaround. I was curious if anybody had used a privilege tax ability at the state level from a public utility standpoint. It sounds like from the ORS that it's allowed, but curious that if anybody's used it, or would we be the first?
I think the City of Talent applied one, and but let me go back and pull my notes up from Jeff Condit, because we looked into some of the applications prior to him preparing his paper that suggested this was a possible pathway for us. But I believe City of Talent did, and I think the key issue there is that it needs to be for a specific purpose, not for general government.
And then lastly, because it is a unique use of a taxation measure, and you're going to need a lot of advocates, it might be good to come to the legacy boards to have Jeff come to the legacy boards to describe it a little more in detail, so we can be ambassadors of that approach if that's what we end up doing.
Happy to do that. It's a great suggestion.
So I just want to do a time check. Wendy, are we okay running long on this item? I think SDIC is fine. Pen 1, Pen 2, you're going to adjourn after this item, but there's a couple questions still for Lori, and I'm inclined to run long, but I just want to do a time check.
It's my understanding that Pen 1's no longer in quorum, so they're going to postpone their agenda item. So it's really at the discretion of SDIC and MCDD. They're the ones with agenda items after this.
Brian, you got a thumbs up. Were you okay to extend this a little bit?
Oh, yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Kenzie, you're up next.
Thanks. I will try to be succinct. First, I'm just more and more appreciating the complexity of this situation that is being very thoughtfully managed by the team, and just wanted to say thank you. Coming from my world, I'm like, oh, this is like preparing for an IPO, or this is like preparing for M&A activity, where you have to really have your house in order and have a very coordinated dance across, different items needing to progress in a organized fashion and with a very sensitive timeline. So I just wanted to say thank you for leading that complex work and helping translate it to all of us. Wanted to try to repeat back like my understanding of how a few key concepts relate, and just to make sure that I am kind of making these connections appropriately. So the rate increase of the assessments, that will then determine how much the privilege tax would be to be collected, and that would help fund operating expenses of the new district. Is that a fair statement?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
So,
And then,
so the
please.
more assessments, the less privilege tax, right? Because we're trying to come to a total number.
Okay. The more collected from assessments, the less that is then needed from the privilege tax in order to get to the whole operating amount needed.
That's
for the new
correct.
district.
And
Okay.
vice versa.
Yes.
Yes, got it. And then separately, the GEO bond the size is determined based on the capital needs in the new district going forward. So I should think about those kind of separately in my head.
That's correct. And the payment back of the GEO bonds, the interest and principal, is property tax. So that would be, it would impact the residents within the full urban district, which is Multnomah County within the UGB, but it is not an operating cost of the new district. It is a separate, that debt service is a separate cost with a separate funding stream to pay it back.
Okay, got it. And then just the last point to make sure I have it clear in my mind, as far as sequencing of timing, once the operating revenue is clear, then the new district will be able to call for dissolution, and potential buyers of this GEO bond in the future will have confidence in that district in order for us to be able to raise that money for these capital investments. Was that the point you're making?
Yes, it's really, it's a challenging situation, because you would think on the GEO bond debt side that the rating agencies, who are the ones that really kind of explain to the investors how secure this investment is, because on the investor side, the GEO bond is an investment. The rating agencies look at the financial health of the organization that is holding the debt. And I've learned this in my past, working on some refinancing of GEO bonds, where I thought all that they would look at would be the stability of the tax base that was repaying the bonds. And the rating agencies spent the entire time asking about financial management and how we were managing our pension plan and how we were addressing operating issues, and didn't ask at all about the tax base and the stability of the tax base. So they really are concerned about making sure that the organization has stood up, that there's a good story underlying that organization that speaks to the financial stability, so that they can give us a reasonable rating. And that reasonable rating then turns around and tells those potential investors that this is a safe bet, and they can provide us that funding.
It's really helpful. Thank you.
It's very complicated.
Thanks, Kenzie. Mary Helen, you're next.
I just want to, the last time I asked this, there was not, but is there any provision or proposed effect on however we collect this, whether it be GEO bond, private tax, utility fee, for limited income, low income people payments? Because utilities have that, sewer, water, city, I don't know other cities, but city of Portland, someone has a low income, yes, they get a reduced rate, and how that would affect the amount of money that would be collected.
Yes, Mary Helen, and I will say that I too am very concerned about this issue. It is at the top of my list to make sure that we are addressing that situation for our low income folks. And really, one of the positives that I see in taking a look at the privilege tax and having the support of our cities' utility billing is that they have those processes in place already. And one of the things that we do want to bring back to you so that you can really see both the benefit and the cost associated with those low-income programs is we've asked Eco Northwest to reach out to each of those cities, the utility billings, and really find out how those programs work and what the cost is so that we can factor that into how much do we need to collect in excess to be able to pay those, to offset those costs. But it is definitely at the front of my mind. And I think one of the reasons that this is a potential revenue source was really very intriguing to me is that there are already those systems in place. We would not have the capability with our small staff to be able to make low-income determinations, to be able to have a full program, to be able to take applications, to be able to work with those individuals. But each of the city's utility billings already have those processes in place, and we would implement the same process. So they would, our revenues would be subject to the same low-income programs that already exist for each of the cities.
Okay,
Just
thank you.
On the GO bond, voter-approved general obligation bonds are not subject to compression. So the amount of tax a person pays is tied to the value of their property. So the more valuable the property, the higher the tax. I recognize that property taxes do fall back down to renters and other low-income individuals, but without compression, it is more progressive than other forms of taxation might be. And hopefully, combined with the low-income program on the other source of revenue, we can still come up with a program that is, I guess the best I would say is less regressive than other options.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for bringing it up. It's a really important topic and something that your staff is really wanting to ensure we provide opportunities for low-income people to only pay their fair share.
Great questions directed at Lori and staff. Lori, I just want to again commend you for being diligent and staying on top of this topic. It's so critical to the eventual dissolution. And I also want to thank all of our district board members who serve on the urban in our behalf. That is such a complex set of issues you're dealing with. Again, our appreciation. So Pen 1 and Pen 2, you're welcome to adjourn. And I'll start with Pen 1. How about Pen 2? Eric, you want to adjourn Pen 2?
Yes, I adjourn the Board of Directors of Peninsula Drainage District number 2. Thank you so much. Val.
You're on it, Val.
We're with you, heart and soul. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Pen 2. Pen 1, are you ready to adjourn?
I can adjourn us. I think it's actually just me anyways at this point. So
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll go ahead and adjourn.
We have
Doing
Tom Collette.
Tom Collette, Annalise. You haven't met Tom yet.
Bye, Tom. I'll adjourn Pen 1.
So we're moving on to our next item, item H. Brian, you're going to lead this discussion on the SDIC IGA we have in front of us. I know it's just informational as well.
Yep, that's correct. So thanks for having me aboard. It's great to be talking to everybody here. Hope everyone's having a great afternoon. But anyway, with the what we got here is a renewal for an IGA between SDIC and Multnomah County. And what this does is it extends what was a previous IGA and amends some minor portions of it. The biggest part about this is that this IGA acts as the permit for SDIC to do work within county properties. And so that when it came to that point, and then we looked at what was this? I believe it's new subsection G, adding to section 4 SDIC responsibilities, talking about permitting requirements. There was a little bit of a hang up there where we tried to figure out exactly what the intent of that was. And what the intent for that is that it authorizes SDIC to apply for permits in Multnomah County areas for outside jurisdictions. So such as the Corps of Engineers. I don't know if there's some other potential outside jurisdictional permits that would be required. And so we got that ironed out, and based upon the other rather minor amendments to these things, I would recommend approval of this to the signing authority. And that's why we're talking about this as an informational item, given that there is some delegated signing authority for matters of these sorts. And so I don't have any objection to the extension of this IGA to 2028, and would also pass along a recommendation to sign it if that was necessary. So with that, unless there's any questions, anybody have any questions about this?
Yeah,
I am planning to sign it unless you direct me otherwise.
Jim, I know Randy stepped away, but I was just wondering, taking on work for others, does this, can he handle this extra work with his own work to do? He has time available, I take it.
Yeah, I think it's related but slightly different, and it just continues some ongoing ability for us to operate on the Multnomah County properties. So I think it's consistent with what we've been doing in the past. We're just renewing it. And because it had that amendment, and Brian thought it would be a good idea to just elevate this for your attention before signing, we're certainly in favor of that and want to make sure you get all the information, particularly that Brian recommends you see. And just to reiterate, Brian's been super helpful. Thank you, Brian. And in Bill's absence, I'm grateful that he volunteered to provide this presentation to you.
Great.
Yep, rather minor blip on there, but I thought it'd be worth the board knowing what's going on.
Thank you, Brian.
Yep. Anybody have any questions? All right. Well,
we'll proceed on that basis.
All right. Thank you very much.
So at this time, SDIC is set to adjourn. SDIC is adjourned at this time. Thank you, Tanny, Annalise, and Stephen. And Annie Holt, thank you for the financials. I really appreciate having those monthly. Really dig into that data. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm turning this over to you, Ken. You got to finish this. Take it to the touchdown, buddy.
All right, we're ready to go. Good seeing you, Tom. Have a good one. All right, I think we only got one agenda item because we punted on the executive session, and that's the compression update. So, Lori, we're going to finish strong with you and tell us.
We're going to finish strong, and I'll try to be quick. I've got good news.
Right.
So, and I have a whole timeline, which I'm not going to pull up unless y'all want to see it. We have been working on this compression issue with the partially exempt properties at the port for a number of months now, probably my entire tenure, it feels like, or much of it, and have made some really great progress. So we were able to get a legal letter from Jeff Condit that explained the misinterpretation that the county was making with the code as far as our assessments on those properties with the port. We were then able to, thanks to a few people working behind the scenes and escalating this up the chain at the county, we were able to meet with the county assessor and with their legal counsel and talk through the issue. And the county has provided me with a letter authorizing direct billing for those properties because they do not have the capability to do the billing in the correct manner for us. So we met with Emerald Bogue and Alex at the port and talked through all of that information. Then the port has asked me to go ahead and process that direct bill, and that bill was sent over to the port. It is for $390,000 for the prior fiscal year, for fiscal year 23. Have not got the cash in hand yet, but feeling pretty optimistic that that revenue will be coming in to fiscal 23, and then we will be continuing to do those manual billings for those impacted properties going forward. The county has agreed to meet with me in the fall to take a look at all of those partially leased government-held properties to make sure that there aren't impacts in our other districts as well. There wasn't anything significant. We've looked through and tried to identify anything, but we do know that local governments quite regularly lease property that that is excess property or in line with the sorts of services that they're providing. And so we'll be working with the county to make sure that we've identified all those properties, and we'll be billing them directly so that we can collect our assessments. So it makes a huge difference for cash flow for MCDD. We are incredibly excited and appreciative to the port in working through this with us. It was a long road. So we know on the other end that the port and other local governments are having a real challenge because they no longer are, the county is no longer billing independently each of those leased properties. And so their property management companies are getting this single bill and they kind of don't know what to do with it. So I think us making some headway with the county hopefully is going to help them make some headway as well and try to resolve that issue. Ken's nodding his head going, gosh, we hope we can get this figured out. But for us on MCDD, as we move into the fall and start to take a look at those cash flow issues, we're in a much better place. Between the 2 years, you're talking $800,000 that'll be coming into that cash account that we weren't going to have had we not resolved this. So it's definitely going to put us in a much stronger position. Doesn't mean that we shouldn't be moving forward with the combination of the districts. We still have an ongoing issue and need to solidify that revenue for all of our districts, but it does put us in a better place than we were 6 months ago. And that's my good news.
Excellent news, Larry. And, from the port standpoint, we always wanted to pay what we owed, right? But we couldn't,
Yes.
we didn't get a bill for it.
Exactly.
And the
Yeah.
port's been
So-
terrific the whole time,
Yeah.
just so you know, they've been very helpful. And as soon as we got the attention of the chair's office, things started moving on the county side as well. And I just would reflect for you, the county had no bad intentions in doing all of this. And again, as soon as we elevated it, they were on it and trying to be helpful. They are a big operation with a lot on their plate, and most of their issues are related to the properties that actually generate tax revenue for them, and the public properties don't do that. So if you can kind of put yourself in their shoes, you can see why this made sense, and we're a pretty small little thing that honestly got overlooked. So
They didn't even recognize they made some changes to their process and didn't recognize that it was going to impact us. So
Yeah. Any questions for Lori?
we are hopeful we won't need any kind of loan next summer, but reserve the right to come to you with a request to authorize one.
So
Sounds
we'll
good.
just keep an eye on it and keep sharing with you that information, particularly after we get the year-end close done and really have a better handle on where we've landed for the year. We can take a look at that cash flow and make sure that we're still in a good place.
Sounds like cash flow is king in 2024.
Absolutely.
Still
Thanks for the
banking on
good news.
Powerball, but it hasn't come through yet. So
Oh, I tried. I won $4. If
Yeah.
I would have won the billion, I was going to give you your 100 million, but
I played myself and I still have my retirement date hasn't changed. So all right, with that, we just truly appreciate you guys' dedication, both at the staff, executive, and board level. And I feel like we're making headway and going in the right direction. Wendy, you had a quick question.
Yeah, just on the rescheduling of the executive session, I just wanted to make sure everyone was clear on that. I believe that we'll have Nikki back. Unfortunately, I believe Corky's unsure whether he can attend and likely will be out of Wi-Fi. I'm not sure. So we have it scheduled for 1 p.m. next Thursday.
and I'm happy to jump off for the board to have any conversation y'all want, if that's helpful. So perhaps I will. I'm just going to take action. Thank you guys for your time.
See you,
Appreciate
Jen.
it.
And if you wanted to give any background, you could go into executive session now.
I'll just say that, you know, Corky, you need to get a sat phone because I would love to have your participation. So if there's any way, it's hard to get us all in the same place at the same time. But we just got the draft back. And so if you can work with Wendy, would be great to make sure that y'all can attend.
I'll make every effort. It's really not to me. It's just up to whether there's cell coverage there or not.
Gotcha. And I'm only giving you a bad time about a sat phone.
Fair enough.
All right.
I appreciate everyone responding to the availability requests. And I will just ask us to, I'll stay on at least till 3 just to make sure we're covering all our bases because we had that meeting noticed for 3. So, but I think you're free to adjourn.
Sounds good. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks all.